Kazoom did a video recently about talking about Rogue One and The Force Awakens and his feelings about those and not really being excited about them, and how, you know, he doesn't really care for these movies that are just everything's got to be an action film. And I agree with him there. Uh, Kate, Bionic Dance, when we also got in a conversation in the comments on that about sequels and which ones we like and don't like, and she and I were largely on the same page. Um, she also does not like the new Star Wars stuff, and I'm with her on that. I'm also a Star Trek fan, and I do not like any of the three Star Trek movies that have come out. Um, and I didn't like the Battlestar Galactica reboot. And I hear word recently that Joe Straczynski is trying to do a reboot on Babylon 5. And as much as I love Babylon 5, it's my favorite series of all TV of all time, not just sci-fi. Um, I'm not sure, one, if it'll get made, or two, I'm not sure that it should be made. I think that in general, their efforts on reboots and remakes and reimaginations are pretty poor. Now, remakes are not new. They've always been making remakes since they were making movies. The movies I grew up with in the 70s and 80s, there was tons of them that were remakes or reimagination of movies from the 50s and 60s, and so many of those in turn were remakes of movies from the 30s and 40s and prior. So that's nothing new. I think part of it is nostalgia. Part of it from a director's perspective is also, hey, I saw that thing I'm inspired by it, and I want to do it one better or do it in a different way. And I can understand it. I mean, certainly, especially for the serialized things like Star Wars, Star Trek, where the whole idea is that we're going to put this out and there's going to be more and more, and you kind of get hungry for more. But I'm not sure that uh, our zeal is really warranted, given the effort that comes out. But there are some good remakes out there and reimaginations and reboots. Um, but my favorite one, or one of my favorites, is The Distinguished Gentleman, with starred Eddie Murphy. Not a great movie, but it's a fun movie, and it is a reimagination of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington now, which is a great movie, by the way. If you've never seen it, you really should see it. But The Distinguished Gentleman, I mean, doesn't hold a candle to the original. I mean, we're talking, the original was an amazing Frank Capra film. Um, the remake is fun though, and I think it's a modern retelling. It's a telling it from a different perspective. Whereas in the original, Mr. Smith he's a Boy Scout. He's a up and at 'em kind of guy, and he's incorruptible. And whereas Eddie Murphy's character starts off corrupt, and the situation changes him, and so it's kind of an interesting journey watching him change. Um, but again, even though I like that movie, it's nowhere near on the same par as the original. The one smart thing though that I think that they did was changing the name, because one of the things that bothers me a lot with any kind of sequel or prequel reimagination is you stick a label on there and you call it whatever, Star Wars, Star Trek, and then I think a lot of times the people doing these things don't really understand whatever it is they're copying from, and I think for that reason they don't do it justice. I remember a YouTube video a few years back, and I can't remember the YouTuber's name. I remember his real name, but I don't want to say that. His name, Peter, he always said that, but I can't remember his channel name. But anyway, he was criticizing people who were critical of the Battlestar Galactica reboot because he felt it was well written and that people were just being fanboys and so forth. And I'm sure there's some of that, but the thing is, when you put that label on, you say, this is Battlestar Galactica, this is Star Wars, this is Star Trek. You bring a certain level of expectation. And is that fair? Well, I think it is, because you're putting that label on there because you're appealing to people's sentimentality. You're saying, hey, if you liked this other movie or series or whatever it was, This is more of the same. It's not identical because there's no point in doing identical. Just watch, I think it's Tim Burton's remake of Psycho, where it's literally a shot-for-shot remake, and it was technically very accurate and really pointless because if you're not going to do something different, what's the point? So I think we have to give leave to the artist to make some changes. Otherwise, yeah, it's useless. But I think there's a constraint that they have to be aware of, though, because you're telling me as the viewer, you're sentimental about this, you like this property, whatever it is, and so this is more of that. So come and see. That's why you should come and spend your $12 or whatever it is to go see the movie. And then if you don't deliver that at least to a certain degree, I think you're kind of cheating the viewer. Because you use that name, and it seems to me that it would have been better if you wanted to do something that was inspired by whatever it was. You could give it its own name and don't copy the name, and this way it doesn't build the same level of expectation. Like for instance, The Distinguished Gentleman. It's clearly the Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. It's inspired by it, but it's not the same. It's not in the same level, and it doesn't pretend that it is. So maybe, and it maybe seem like semantics, but to give you an example, in the Battlestar Galactica, you know, to me, the main part of the show was the dynamic between Apollo and Starbuck, and gender change aside, I just don't think that was present in the new Battlestar Galactica. I didn't feel it when I watched, and I watched about eight or 10 episodes. I had started watching the show, didn't like it, and stopped watching. And then I met Richard Hatch at Gen Con, and I got to talk to him for about an hour. And I lamented that his effort to rebuild the series was not successful. And he personally pleaded with me to give the show another chance. And I said, well, if Apollo is going to ask me to watch the show, I got to give it a fair shake. And I watched about 6 episodes after that, and it just didn't take. Because the thing is, and I'm sure a lot of people liked it, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just kind of wish that maybe if they had called it something else, or if they didn't use the original character names, maybe I would have liked it more, because it would have taken it apart from the old thing. So they wouldn't be saying, well, hey, this is the Battlestar Galactica you knew, or this is the new Battlestar Galactica. And I know that's what they tried to do, but when you put those Apollo and Starbuck and all this, you bring to me an expectation. Baltar was completely different than the Baltar from the old series. Not that he was bad, but it's not my Baltar, and I'm not really interested in that. Call him something else, and I didn't mind the gender changing per se. I think it would have been smarter, though, to maybe bring in some of the characters that had been on the other show, if they were going to keep the names, like Shiva, and because there's a strong female character they could have used without messing with the Starbuck Apollo dynamic. And that's the thing. Kazum also talked about these action films, and I think that's another big problem I have with the new Star Wars and Star Trek films, is that those films were not action movies. They had action in them. They always had plenty of action, to be sure, but they're not action movies. I think Star Trek, for instance, to me, Wrath of Khan is the best Star Trek movie of all. And I think a lot of people would agree. And there's only 2 battles in that whole film. There's the battle, about a third of the way through, and then there's the final battle, and that's it. Everything else is exposition of some sort. Star Wars, you have the early battle, you have the final battle, you have the running battle, and then little snippets here and there, but it's not an action movie. It's got themes and so forth. Whereas The Force Awakens, there's a battle in every single scene, and it got tiresome after a while. I just couldn't take it. Not to mention what they did with those battles, I thought was pretty horrible. But so I want to be fair to the filmmakers and give them leave, like I said, to do something new and fresh. But there you have to draw a line, and some of the things that people had said about the Rogue One movie, that they felt that it didn't feel like a Star Wars movie for, either at all or the first 2/3 of the film, and that was actually the good part about it, which seemed odd to me because again, you put that Star Wars label on, I have a certain expectation, and if you're going to make it not like a Star Wars film, it makes me wonder why you call it Star Wars. It doesn't mean it's bad, but it means it's not Star Wars. So I doubt I'm going to see it in the theater. I'll probably just wait for it to get on cable. Um, unless one of my friends drags me to it. We'll see. But anyway, that's my thought. I'm generally anti sequel, prequel, remakes, reimaginations. I think just try to do something new, and stop trying to rebuild the past. I know a lot of stuff that all throughout the '90s they were remaking stuff from my childhood, and they did a horrible job. Even the Brady sequel, I know a lot of people liked it; it was fun and all that, but they make it. It was really a parody of it, and that's another problem sometimes too. Is that where they kind of make fun of the source material. Like I'm still angry at Will Ferrell and the people who made the Land of the Lost remake because I like that series. Yeah, like in modern day it's cheesy and all that, but for its day the effects were pretty amazing. It got a lot of accolades because it was 1976, and it's easy to look down your nose at it now. But basically, the movie was a joke, and it was almost like saying to the people who liked the original, "Wow, what a fool you were!" And I don't really cotton with people who have contempt for their audience. I think that's just too cynical, and I don't really care for that. So anyway, so this is why I don't go to the movies very often. Got That Funk is up tomorrow. I'm sure he'll have something great and interesting to say because he is awesome. So I'll see you next time.